Well, hello and welcome to this channel called AstroPsych 400. I am your host, Ned DeHaan. I am also the host of the program Black Box Online Radio here on YouTube and Launchpad One, as well as a segment here on AstroPsych 400 called the Podcast for Sleep. If you struggle with insomnia or have trouble falling asleep at night, I would recommend the Podcast for Sleep available here on this show. It's a customized program to help people fall asleep, and as always, you can like and subscribe. Today I'm going to be talking about Dr. Robert Glover. Some people pronounce his name Glover, but I always thought of him as Dr. Robert Glover, so I'm going to go with that one. I learned about him in a different way than most people. Many people find his stuff because he wrote a book called No More Mr. Nice Guy, but I learned about him because of the podcast interviews that he had done, which were available here on YouTube. Dr. Robert Glover also went on to write a book called Dating Essentials for Men, and for a while I thought that he was going to become one of my unofficial mentors. But the more that I listened to his material, I found that a lot of it's repackaging his ideas in different contexts in his podcast interviews, which he is supposed to do. It's just that there are lots of basic points in his message that he is sharing with people, as opposed to thinking of something new every single time he does an interview. No fault against him, because I think that his material is excellent. But because I learned about him in this roundabout way, if you would like to hear a chapter by chapter discussion on No More Mr. Nice Guy by Dr. Robert Glover, I recommend you go over to the channel Oak, Leaves, and Onions. It is hosted by a woman, and she does a lot of self help book reviews for books that are based on men's issues. Oak, Leaves, and Onions has the chapter by chapter response to No More Mr. Nice Guy. But I think Dr. Robert Glover's overall most important strength is diagnosing the problem, identifying what is wrong with typical nice guy behavior. I was a boring nice guy for 28 years. I completely know what he's talking about because it's the way that he sets the frame and says that, okay, this is what nice guys are doing wrong. They meet a girl. They try and talk to her for 3 months, gonna show her what a great guy he is. And then he expects to be rewarded with sexual favors. But dating is not like that. Romance isn't like that. Life is not like that. That you just show somebody how good you are and they will want you. So I think that he's completely correct in that assessment. Another point that I thought was very interesting to learn about from all the material that Dr. Robert Glover has created is that he is honest. He's not afraid to share his wrongdoings because that doctor in his name means that he is a marriage and family therapist and therapy specialist. But he openly said that he left his first wife and son so he could be with a different woman because he thought they were just having this type of passionate, loving relationship. And on their honeymoon, she said, well, we're married now. We don't have to pretend that we're enjoying the sex anymore. So that's also a big lesson that he had to learn, that with both his first wife and his second wife, he said that he should never have gone on more than 3 dates with either one of them. The concept of nice guys aren't standing up for themselves, they aren't taking charge, they aren't being the strong, capable person. Instead, they're going along with things that they do not want to do because they think that by being agreeable, it is going to benefit them in the long run, when in fact it does not. It turns them into pushovers. And again, firsthand experience, I can definitely confirm a lot of that. But I also found that if we have to give some criticism, I think the biggest problem with Dr. Robert Glover's material is it doesn't go far enough. It doesn't completely challenge the order that we have in life. For that, I think you need somebody like Rollo Tomasi, author of The Rational Male, or even John Sonmez, who is the host of the channel Bulldog Mindset here on YouTube. Because some guy like Rollo Tomasi would approach that and say, like, okay, this guy Robert Glover, he's way too mild. We just need to flat out say there are genuine differences between men and women. There are just differences in our brains. The male brain and the female brain function differently, and women are going to respond more emotionally. Men are going to respond more logically. And when you're in a relationship with someone, they're not going to behave exactly the way that you expect them to behave. And a woman is not going to love a man in the way that he expects to be loved. That's from Rollo Tomasi. But what I believe John Sonmez from Bulldog Mindset offers is by saying flat out that you cannot desire friendship from a woman. It's like he just says it flat out, like 100% clear as day. Men and women should not be friends. If a woman says, hey, let's just be friends, what you say back to her is, I don't have platonic female friends because it's not an honest friendship. And in all seriousness, I think that this is something that even Dr. Robert Glover can touch upon to a certain extent when he talks about how the man thinks that he's going to have access to a woman. And he also says that women know completely what a man is about. And this really could be put in the overall strengths of Dr. Robert Glover's material because he focuses on the way that women are thinking, perhaps coming from a marriage and family therapy background. He seems to have a very heightened sense of awareness on how women think and how they make decisions. Number one, he was the first person to say, I've never met a woman who didn't know how attractive she was. I quote that all the time when people are like, hey, what's this girl all about? I bring up Dr. Robert Glover, and he says, I've never met a woman who didn't know how attractive she was. Women are aware of what's going on, and women know what men want and what men expect in relationships. This is also from Dr. Glover, because he says women understand the male desire for sexuality. And it was always so puzzling for me to listen to women in conversations when they say, guys only care about one thing. Men are just pigs. Men are just dogs. They only want sex. And then on the other hand, they're like, oh no, I thought you just wanted to be friends. Well, how can it be both? I mean, how can it be both? And I think that he is very politely saying, well, that's not really true. Women know that men desire them for sex. And here is something that women just need to comprehend. There was an article in Psychology Today that just simply identified it, and they put it out there that male personality traits have no effect on sexuality. With 80% of men, they want to have sexual relationships with a high frequency of partners. 80% of men. Now, 20% of men perhaps deal with HSDD, hypoactive sexual desire disorder, and they have below average sexual desires, sex drives, disinterest in sex, for lack of a better term. But that's not even about personality traits. That's about something different, most notably hormone levels. But we aren't completely sure what causes HSDD. But personality traits have no effect on male sexuality. But what about with women? With women, if someone is high in trait openness, or if she is high in um, openness and agreeableness is the other one. If she's high in trait agreeableness, then she is more likely to be sexually active. Openness to experiences, meaning she wants to have new experiences. Agreeableness, meaning she agrees to go along with what somebody wants. It makes perfect sense when you say it like that. So personality traits can affect a woman's sexual desires, but not a man. So women know exactly what's happening. And as I said, Dr. Robert Glover's material doesn't go far enough because I was watching this in an episode of Bulldog Mindset where the host, John Sonmez, simply flat out said that you have to start thinking about how a woman is responding. And she has this expectation about how the man is going to behave. It's like, okay, well, he's just going to be a friend. He's not going to do anything. But as I said, this is just one article from Psychology Today, but it made sense to me. There is no effect on personality traits for men. Sexuality does not affect personality traits for men. So once this friend gets the girl alone with him, and then he makes a move on her, and she's like, oh, I thought we were just friends. Like, how on earth could this happen? And John Sonmez said that it's not being a boring nice guy. It's being a sexual ninja. And I firstly we gotta make that just like mainstream and global and share that all with the world that the term sexual ninja, just that's like when a woman doesn't expect a man to make an advance and then he does. He tries something with her for that reason. Personality traits do not affect male sexuality. So Some other parts of Dr. Robert Glover's material that I think are very fascinating is perhaps the covert contract. We couldn't talk about him without including the covert contract, which is as simple as if you think that someone, if your behavior towards someone is going to affect their decisions, that if you behave in a certain way, then other people will reciprocate the actions toward you. Meaning that if you do those things for a woman, you talk to her for 3 months and show her what a great guy you are, then she's going to want to give you sexual favors. No one ever agreed to that, though. It's like a one-sided agreement. And again, Dr. Robert Glover's stuff is very good, but maybe it doesn't go far enough because there's a guy out there named Jesse Lee Peterson who hosts The Fallen State, who always plays this advertisement on his morning show when he says that you have this way that you think it should go, but don't have a way that you think it should go. No one ever agreed to do things your way. And when people don't do things your way, you blame them for being mad. And I think that final sentence always really stood out to me because I think that it's more about you blame them because you are mad. You get mad because someone didn't do what you wanted. Well, they never agreed to do what you wanted. So have no opinion about it. And he gets into a lot of things like selflessness, which again I haven't exactly heard from Dr. Robert Glover. Instead, from Dr. Robert Glover, some other points that I think he has in his discussions that are very valuable relate to the way that a man acts in a relationship when the nice guy is thinking that he is going to succeed in a relationship by being polite, by being respectful, by having conversations with people, by bonding with the child of a single mother, by bonding with her kid. He thinks that that is going to improve his relationship status with her, that she's going to like him more for that. But again, that really isn't the case. It's if anything, that detracts from his potential in the relationship. The whole point is conventionally nice behaviors are not rewarded, and if anything, people will just try and take advantage of the nice guy. I also heard something very interesting from Dr. Robert Glover when he said, "Nice guys do not finish last. They rot in middle management." I think it's actually the name of a class that he taught, where and I mean that's just that sentence is right there. Nice guys don't finish last. They rot in middle management. Maybe a sentence if you use a semicolon. That stood out to me because even though I said I was a conventionally nice guy for 28 years, I really began to think about finishing last. No, I don't think so. And I was talking about this on one of the podcasts for sleep when I was saying that other than one time, every business environment that I had been thrown into, I succeeded at. And I was one of the top performers in whatever company that I worked with, no matter what we were doing. Yet most people would have described me as the nicest person in those companies. And I really began to think, well, what exactly is it? What exactly does that mean? It's just that nice guys don't finish last, they rot in middle management. Would I have ever been promoted to like vice president or something like that? Heck no. Absolutely not. For those reasons, though, people don't view that type of behavior as authoritative and or just they don't think that a person with those personality traits would be good in a leadership position. But the hard thing for me to accept was that's true. If you're overly agreeable the way that I was, how on earth could you be a leader? Like, I'm breaking the rules. Oh, I don't know what to do. I mean, more or less, you would be in that type of situation. But when it comes to nice guy at tactics, on the channel Oak Leaves and Onions, which I recommended in the beginning, the host of that program, I believe she is anonymous, she said something to the effect of nice guy behavior can be toxic, where nice guys don't understand that they're only using things like conversation and emotional connection as a way to get sex from a woman. And they aren't even aware of it. They aren't even aware of the fact that they don't actually care about what she is doing or how she is feeling. They're just talking to her because that once again they want to be rewarded with sexual favors, and it's a totally impractical strategy, but it becomes toxic because that person doesn't know why they're doing what they're doing. They are not paying attention to how the other person cares at all. And in all reality, it's just a form of power tripping. But the nice guy thinks that he will obtain power by using conventionally nice means, by using emotional tactics as opposed to ruling with an iron fist and using tyrannical measures. And Dr. Robert Glover goes into a lot of these ideas in his book. But one point I heard from him in an interview was very simply that nice guys think that they don't have to change. They think that everyone else is the problem because it's like, I'm not yelling at someone, I'm not shouting at anyone, I'm not mistreating anyone, I'm not being conventionally mean to anyone, I'm not stealing, I'm not trying to fight, I'm not trying to insult people. Therefore, the nice guy doesn't have to change. But what I mean, this is true for men and women. People who live in that world, as I did for a very long time, aren't aware of how their arrogant and holier than thou behaviors can take its toll on relationships. For the sole fact of being around someone who simply thinks that they always have the moral high ground is not a pleasant experience. And a lot of people are very uncomfortable around someone in that way because they don't know what they can say, they don't know what is acceptable, and they don't care or respect the other person's judgment, but they just don't want to hear it. So they just try to disassociate from that person, and eventually that person will be excommunicated and kicked out of the social group. Maybe a little bit of first-hand experience in there as well. But the whole point is that nice guys think that they don't have to change, and there's just this refusal to admit that standing up for yourself is unacceptable. Dr. Glover has shared some things about this before when he says nice guys are afraid to be mean. And here's a point that I would challenge in his stuff for the sole fact that when I was living that whole nice guy mindset, I simply thought that maybe I should say I simply felt that I would get sick if I were mean. And if I were to do something really mean to somebody, I would indeed get physically sick. And I would just feel like I had the flu because being conventionally mean felt really bad. And there's just some type of force that tells you you should not do this. And most people, in fact, I'll say this: nobody truly wants to fight. I mean, what people actually want is to achieve a sense of inner peace, and they want to achieve a virtuous life. It's just anyone who says anything to the contrary is confused and mistaken. But it's just sometimes you have to engage in conflict, and sometimes you have to stand up to someone who is trying to be an oppressor. Those things are bad. We have to get to the ideal, but we have to go through the peaks and the valleys and the ups and the downs and the conflict of life, whereas nice guys would mostly try to avoid it. So, in conclusion, I think that Dr. Glover is absolutely excellent at diagnosing the problem, but to reiterate the criticism, I don't think that his material goes far enough in terms of an action plan when it's simply about how you need to recognize the differences between men and women, recognize the different actions of the brain, and also just men need to reevaluate their desires and their expectations in a relationship. And I said I got all this from Peterson, Sonmez, and Tomasi. All of those guys are all over YouTube, and I love their stuff too. But I don't mean that to be a nasty type of criticism. Instead, I think that it's just my personal response to it based on whatever I went through in my 20s, so to speak. But what do you think about Dr. Robert Glover, and what do you think about No More Mr. Nice Guy Dating Essentials for Men, or any of the interviews that he has done online? And also, if you would like to weigh in on Rollo Tomasi or John Somnes or Jesse Lee Peterson or Oak Leaves and Onions, any of the people that I've talked about in this episode, please put your ideas down in the comment section down below. And once again, if you have any trouble falling asleep at night, please feel free to visit the podcast for sleep here on Astro Psych 400. And please like and subscribe. My name is Ned DeHaan, and I'll see you guys on Black Box Online Radio. Until next time.